I'm going to review setting up a specification drawing for a case-bound box structure. I'm using the same structure. I've done a couple of tutorials using this. And this is for a specification drawing, but not a die line. So it's a little bit different. In rigid boxes, since these are essentially handmade, assembled components, we're not going to delineate a die line and fold it up like we did with the corrugated and the folding carton project. This will be an assembled shape, so we need to document the design as an assembly, much like you would document a bottle or a finished product of some kind. So this is the object. I think I had to go back to my layers, I think I have the base in here. But yeah, there it is. Okay. So I have the base, the two outside boxes, and then the bottle itself. I do have this extra panel on the front here because that's where the art was. So I'm not going to really deal with art at this point. I'm just going to save out this part and put it onto another layer and move it around to set up for specification drawing. This is like another process of doing that. It's a little easier, a little more intuitive, and I kind of like working this way because I can work right here with this solid 3D file. So what I would do is I would select this, just select the whole part, and then I want to change this to a layer. I'm going to leave this here. I'm using it for renderings. So we want to change that to another layer. So I set up a layer and I called it, orthographic layout. That's where I'm going to do all this work. So by selecting that new layer with this object selected, if you go under this, under the tools category, there's a thing here that says copy objects to layer. So all you have to do is click on that and it'll automatically make a copy of this and put it to another layer. So that's pretty convenient. I'm not going to do it again since I had already done that. Then once we do that and we have it on the other layer, then I take that and I move everything around. So this is going to look a little chaotic here. Let's take the base out and the bottle. Okay, so there's that front view that I was just looking at. I brought it in. So all I did was I took that and just manipulated it. I closed it over here, and then I put it up here at the top view so I can look down on the top of that. And I took out the internal components, the base and these little locking blocks that have the magnets that hold the bottle together. So I moved them around into position like this so I could look at this from the front view. And I have this on wireframe. So here I'm laying out enough room so I can put some dimensions around all these parts. Might take a little time to figure out how to do that, but you can move them around, do some dimensioning and figure out how it's all going to fit. So I'm going to turn this into a specification drawing with a border and a title block and some notes and all the dimensions. I want to mention one thing that I forgot to do here. Let's go back into perspective. There's these internal lines here. I just have this on gray mode, ghosted, so we can see these lines. I'm just going to select this part. So we have these internal cross lines. Those are iso curves. They're defining a shape. So when it's a square, they kind of arbitrarily pick an area like right through the center of the square and it kind of lets you know that it's a surface. And on a bottle, we have all these little tiny internal edges and lines and things like that that define that shape. You know, when we get involved with compound curves, some of these iso lines can be quite complex. I should have turned that off before I did this drawing, but I didn't. So I was going to show you really quick how to do that. So if you select an object and you go under its features down here, you have iso curve density, where you can control how dense they are or even turn them off entirely. So let's look at this part when I turn this off. So now we can see all those internal lines are gone. So now it's just a very clean piece of geometry. It's just the outside lines and the thicknesses and the inside lines. So that would have been a lot easier if I had done that to all these parts first, but I didn't. So I'll show you what happens when you do it that way. So let's just put that back on for now. So we're going to go to front view, and you have all these set up. So that's the start of how to do this. So what I'm going to do is define some of these other components that go within a specification drawing. I guess one of the big ones here, I have center lines on here, but you can't even see them because all the iso lines are in the way. The big one that we're going to define here is this border. This starts to tell us about how big our page is going to be. So this is the border that we're going to see on our drawing. My actual paper size is a little bit bigger, and I believe I have that on my dimensions layer. And there it is. I have this other little light line around here, and that's going to be the size of my paper. So here are all my dimensions. So I dimensioned each one of these parts. This is the insert up in the top of the package. I have the base. I have the little extrusions that make all this work. And I have an open and closed and a top view and some overall dimensions. And I did this just in line. There's lots of ways to do this. I mean, technically, what should be done is the outline of the object should be in dark line. All internal edges should be in dotted lines. And the dimensions are in the even a thinner line. So that's the rules from the very beginning. I kind of modify them once in a while just for expedience sake or what is needed. So it can vary, but something like this is important. Again, we're not doing die lines, we're doing specification drawings, a little bit different. So this is what this looks like. So let me just review dimensioning quickly. I'll work on this part up here. I think I also, let's see what I did with my line weights. I think I punched up my object line. Let's see if I have that set up. Let's see, view, a print per view. Okay, I have that. I'm going to turn that off for a second so we can see the difference. So everything kind of goes into the same line weight. So to see what this is going to look like, if you go under view and go to print preview, we get to see some of the lines and the line quality and how it works and how thickness things are. So let's just turn off my dimensions layer. That off. So let's go into the dimensions area. So go under dimensions up here at the top. And if you click on annotation style, this dialog comes up. I'm working in inch and decimal. So if you go under edit, this will come up. Now I have this set up already, but I'll just show you what I did. There's this little picture up here under this gray field, and that kind of shows you what you're doing. What I do is I set up my arrowheads to a certain size. I set up my type. My type size varies depending on how big the drawing is, because quite often these drawings are viewed in a digital mode and they're not actually printed. So with that in mind, if I have a really, really big drawing, sometimes I make my copy even bigger than I normally would, so we can see it on the screen. Otherwise, you can't see the copy, and arrowheads and things like that. I like to break my dimension lines, which means you open them up and the dimensions sit in the middle. I like my dimensions always horizontal on the page instead of vertical and horizontal. And you can see how that fits into the break area. And then the size of my arrowheads. So the very first thing you have to do, it's very important, up here at the top, it says model, space, scale. Make sure that's on 1. It'll be 1 point, and then many zeros. So we need to have that on that exact, so it's 1 to 1. So everything we do is accurate. So I'm making guesstimations knowing inches and sizes of inches. So if you're working in metric, you'll know, 5 millimeters high is whatever that might be. So you can sort of guess based on your page size how big things should be, like arrowheads and dimensions. So under font, the big thing, I'm just using Arial, which is standard. And here I went for 1/4 of an inch high. This worked out really well for this page size. Text gap, I don't think you really need that. A lot of this other stuff you don't really need at this point. So the big thing is pick your typeface and how high it is, how big it is. The next part will be dimensions. And that's sort of what I was talking about with the different size. I have horizontal on view selected. I have it inline, which means I'm breaking the line. And then for my radial dimensions, which is like circles and diameters, they're asking the same question. So horizontal on view, and I'm breaking it inline. So those kinds of things you can set up. And if you don't get it quite right, take a look at how it looks, and you can always come back and edit that later. Dimension line extension. I don't think I have anything on that. Extension. 1/4 inch extension line extension. It's a little confusing. It's just how the witness lines and the dimension lines relate to one another. How far off from the object. I have it about 1/8 of an inch. Baseline, you don't even need any of that. A little bit about dimensioning. The next, I guess the big one here is the arrows. I usually do extra thin, but here I did just plain thin arrows. If you click on this, you get a whole bunch of different arrow options. So I just did a thin arrow, and these things are linked together. And then the size of the arrow, how long the actual arrow is, I have that little under 3/8 of an inch, a little over 1/4 inch, 0.3. Let's see what else. Draw dimension lines between extension lines. I turn that off quite often. I don't like that, but sometimes if I do, I'll go back and make adjustments on that. Even after you do all your dimensions, there might be one dimension that doesn't work well. You don't want to change the whole group. You're allowed to just double click on that one dimension and you can change the features and characteristics of that one dimension. So that's pretty convenient. Leader arrows for, this is for angles and radiuses and diameters. So I have the same settings for that. So that's really it. So if you set that up, you can start to manipulate some of these dimensions. So under dimensions, once you have that set, you go over here all the way to the right and you click on drafting. Now all your drafting tools will come up. Most of them you're going to use are right up front. This first one is horizontal and vertical. And then they actually break up horizontal and vertical separately. And then you can do it on an angle. You can do angle dimensions and radiuses and diameters. Those are the main things you're going to use. And there's some text editing where we can put title blocks and things like that down. So if you go under this first thing, here's horizontal and vertical. This will be the biggest part that you will use. So all we have to do is you have snapping tools are on. So have your ortho snap. And this will do all the calculations for you. So if you click on 2 points and just raise it up, you can move it around. So this is 4.47. And you just click and it freezes and there it is. So all your horizontals can be done that way. And your verticals can be done with the exact same tool. And come down here. And there I have, see, I have my dimensions horizontal in both locations. So I can put that where I want and dimension that. So this one conveniently has a little arc here. So let's do what that might be. Do this one with radius. So all I have to do is click on the point surface edge and the dimension comes up and I can kind of put it where I want to have it. So let's say I like it in here. That's a radius, I can click. And then when something goes wrong, you can just delete it. If something gets in the way and I know I want another dimension, you want to move it, you can put it to a different location. Let's see if I have an angle over here. Let's do this. We'll do this angle right here. Let's pick this. So essentially what they want you to do is just pick two edges and then the dimension comes up. So this is a little awkward. I would not want to dimension this way, this 300 degrees, where it's going all the way around to the outside. That's a little odd looking. So what I would want it to do, I want it to go this way. But I really don't have a lot of room up here. And if I did, it would go way out here. So that's a little awkward looking, and I don't want it in the middle of my part. So you have to kind of make some judgment calls about how you want to do this. So let's say I don't like that one. So I'm going to undo that, edit, do. So what we can do is we can kind of build construction lines to get this to work. So I'm going to build some construction lines out here. I have ortho, and it doesn't really how big it is. I'm just going to snap to it and I'm going to delete it later. So I'm going to put that line there. So we get rid of ortho. Actually, I could probably, no, I don't want to do it that way. I'm going to get rid of ortho and put another line over here. But I want it to be on this angle. So I'm actually going to snap. I'm going to snap to that. I'm going to select that line and just move it out here where I can work with it. Oops. Oh, I'm grabbing the wrong edge. Hold on. Undo. Curve. This is what I needed. So I'll move this out here. Huh. Why is it doing that? Okay. So now I've added these two other lines out here. So I can dimension to those two lines, which I think will give me a better position to show these. So let's try it. Huh. Radius. Why isn't this working? Here we go. Huh. Huh. All right, let's just rotate that. Why not snapping? On snap. Hey, how'd it go? All right. So sometimes when it's not lining up in the right place, you can just draw some construction lines and work with them. So let's go back to our angles. Select one line, select the other line. And now the dimensions are down here outside. So this is somewhere where it'll work a lot better. So I'm not sure exactly where I put it, but somewhere in here, and I can click. And now I can do other dimensions and it keeps it off the object out of the way. So that's just one way of organizing how that might work. Let's just do the circle. So radiuses and diameters are very similar. It's basically just the code used to define what you're doing. So I'm going to select diameter, select this, call it an edge, and then I can put this where I want. So instead of an R, we have a circle with that diagonal slash through it, which means diameter. So something like this, I would probably use a diameter because it is a diameter size, and that's also the diameter of the bottle, so it fits. So that can be confirmed that that's going to work. The other dimension was a radius, it's only a partial curve, so I use the radius dimension there. So that's essentially it. It just takes a little time to figure out how to get these dimensions to fit. I mean, I do the same thing. I put a bunch down and I realize there's not enough room. So I'll move things, delete it, relocate some dimensions and get that all to work. So let's just get rid of these. These two guys. Okay, so the other part is putting in the notes. So under dimensions, we can have text block. So if you select text block, this dialog box comes up and you can set up the type and the size. So you could do this a little bit differently than the rest. Like if I want my type and my text block to be very big or bold or different, you can set that all. And all you have to do is just start typing in this dialog box. And that's how I set up my title block. So I would just say, I'm going to cancel here. But I would just say, okay. So I have all of this. I keep everything on different layers so I can control like the darkness and how things are. So I have my dimensions on a different layer. And I kept that at default. And my actually my objects, I went to 0.6 for 0.6 of a millimeter to check on the dimensions on that. So you can see all my ISO lines, these little lines in the middle of the part. I mean, I wasn't even thinking when I did that, I should have turned all that off because it is a little confusing. But I just took care of that in Illustrator. So next time I will remember to do that. So the final thing we have to do is get this out of the program. So the one way I like to do this is I just select everything when I have everything on board here, and I go up to File, and we can go to Export Selected. It'll ask us to save first. So what we would do is go to PDF. I have it already saved, so I'll just go through this again so we can see how this looks. So select that again and say save. And I'll say yes, I did. So you have to save it first before you can go in there and control the size. That's a little backwards to me, but that's fine. Now I don't remember what dimensions I used. Let's see if I can go back in here and remember. I did not use 14, 17. Huh. Okay, I have to cancel. Let me just see if I can remember what I did. So I'm just going to go into my dimension tools here. Let's see what I So measuring this outside border. So I had 30, probably 30 by 18. 30 by 18. Okay, so now I'm back to File, Export Selected, PDF. I'm going to go here and say Save. Yes. Okay, now I can control that. So now I'm going to under Custom, which is kind of nice. You can do any dimension you want. So whatever your paper size ends up being, you could set that up. So 30 by 18. I'm still in inches. I'm doing 300 DPI, which is good amount. So now it's sitting here and it's not quite fitting in the page. So there are two commands we have to control down here. We have to do extends, which means everything in the window. That's why I have that perfect border around it, so it'll fit right in there. It'll fill it up, but it's not perfect until we do scale. I'm not sure why they broke it up this way. So even with extends, the scale is still 99.01. So under scale to fit, we have to go to 1:1, which says, okay, I'm still, oh yeah, that's perfect. It fits right in with that little lightweight border that I had around the outside. So that's it. So all we have to do is just press save. I'm going to cancel because I already have it saved. And you'll get this as a PDF. So let's just go over to, let's see, new share. I'm going to go here, share. So here it is in the PDF program. So it looks pretty good. It's pretty bold. You can see it. The dimensions are really quite large. Pretty good. I mean, this is 30-inch paper, so that's a big number. but this really looks well. It looks good on a digital medium like this. So you see all my ISO lines, all these additional lines in here. It's really, really confusing. So I just took this and cleaned it up in Photoshop, and it's going to look so much better there. So now it's such a very simple shape because all it is two boxes with a little tray in it, and then these little components at the top. So I should have done that in the first place instead of going through all of this. But it was okay. Once it's a PDF and I bring it into Illustrator, I can just select the lines and delete them. So something like this, depending on what your package looks like, you might have several components, you might not. So I have them assembled here, and then I have them taken out so each component can be looked at separately. Quite often you will do a pack of drawings where each one of these parts will be separate. And it'll be a whole package of drawings of the different parts. Sometimes they distribute them to different departments. It really depends on who you're working with. But for our class, you can do it all on one page and get it to fit and organized. I mean, one thing that would have been helpful would have been like little perspective or three-quarter views of what this looks like, or what the part looks like. That is always very, very helpful. This page would have gotten huge if I did that. But a little three-quarter view just so everybody can see what the parts look like and how they relate to one another would be good. Okay, so that's just covering off on a specification drawing for a rigid case-bound box structure.